Welcome to We Think, We Talk, sponsored by Select Care Pharmacy, a pharmacy that is non-retail but that services the smallest of group homes to the largest of skilled nursing facilities, with prompt attention and care and world-class customer service. Welcome back to We Think, We Talk, sponsored by Select Care Pharmacy. We're continuing a conversation with Mark Milstead, who you guys are following this, so it seems like this is just continuing but we're in different clothes. This is a different day.
Yeah.
So we're a couple of weeks apart here. But not to recap the whole conversation, because I do want people to watch this, our previous, but what we're talking about is going into assisted living facilities, placing your loved one. And we've been over a lot of good information with that. Now what I want to touch on is some of the finer points of the objections that people see that they're honestly surprised by, and how you personally, because I know and I've seen you do it, how you can overcome some of these objections and some of the things that people don't realize are available, and we can sort of bring that in. But one thing is, obviously, when you speak to your clients, and like we discussed previous show, you get a lot of phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
And probably within the first 3 or 4 questions that they bring up is, how much does it cost?
Yep. Every time.
Every time. So at the end of the day, money matters, for the simple fact that most, I would say, 98% of clients don't have unlimited access to money. But they're not necessarily always educated on what they currently have in their life, can potentially be big money. And I wanted to talk to you about how we kind of look at that and how we address that to them, because, I find it maybe I'm ignorant to real reality because I grew up doing this. But, assets are money.
Oh, yeah.
And I just don't think that people look at it, because I think when they're in this situation, a lot of times they call you and they're desperate.
They're in emergency mode.
And they're looking at a number that's in the checking account, right?
A lot of times they'll look at the number in the checking account, but they're getting that mixed up with what they really need. And a lot of times a family member will start going down the trail of, this is who my mom is, this is where she lives, this is how much money she has in her checking account and her savings account. What can you do with that? Mm-hmm. And I usually, once I get a break in, because it comes real quick, mm-hmm. Once I get a break, I usually say, let's step back a little bit, mm-hmm. and let's talk about, tell me the story. Something led you to this point. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'll tell them, tell me the story as to what made you think that your mom needed some extra care. And let's start there. Because maybe what you think you want isn't exactly what you want and need.
Wow, yeah.
And there could be some other alternatives that are much cheaper and gives your mom what she wants, actually.
And I want to address this, because this is I think this human part of us. Sometimes we feel if it's more expensive, it's better.
Oh, yeah.
I can say in our business, that statement, there is never truth to that always. Sure, there are a lot of communities in our area and across the United States that charge a lot, but they also provide. I mean, they do a great job. But let's break it down to what you and I actually look at. Before the paint, before the building, before the chandeliers, before all that, and we've discussed this before.
Oh, yeah.
What is the one thing that absolutely matters no matter where mom, dad, loved one goes? What is the ultimate goal that you're putting them there for?
Quality of care.
Quality of care.
Not just care.
Yeah.
Because you can get just care.
You can get just care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen that. But quality of care.
Right.
And quality of care does not always come with $1 million price tag.
Right.
And another thing that I want to discuss, and just kind of we will fall into it because it sounds like I'm jumping, but I'm not, because this is really one pot that has everything has to be put together to make the perfect stew, if you will, for anyone. But there's so many things happening at one time that once they speak to you and you slow them down, and then you have to ask the questions. You have to have the story, and those stories are
Amazing.
Yeah, and I wish I could share them, but some of them are so specific. It's just unbelievable. But slowing them down is what you're really good at, and I think some people miss that because they also get caught up in the moment with them. Once you slow them down, the story becomes, the holes in the story start to get filled.
Right.
Then money, the conversation goes back to money.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've slowed it down a little, because now you're starting to find out what care they need. Because I think when people in general that have not worked healthcare and have not worked in our industry, they think that it's all the same in a lot of ways. Like, I remember my grandmother saying this, well, when I get to a certain age, I'm just going to have to put my name in the hat at the retirement home.
So what I hate is when somebody says, "Tell me about the nursing home." Yeah. And it's like, that right there tells you that they've lumped everything into one bucket.
One bucket.
And no matter what you tell them for a while, it's going to be a nursing home.
Right.
And it's not the nursing homes that we have today.
No.
It's definitely not assisted living.
No.
And they have in their mind the place that their grandma was in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And we've come a long ways since then.
I'll tell you this, a little bit off the point, but it comes right back to what you just said about everybody lumping that all into one category. Not too long ago, and I think we talked about this a little bit, that I was going to do this, but I had a meeting with a fair amount of physicians that are prescribing physicians. They have offices, and they work with two prominent hospital systems in our area. Mm-hmm. So they have privileges at the hospital, and very educated group of people. And I was actually very pleased with the knowledge they had in regards to diagnoses of aging, such as the information they have learned since just 10 years ago on dementia, and levels of care, and not using the word adult failure to thrive. That word drives me insane because I hear that, but what does that mean? But what shocked me, though, on another level that still exists is they're still also, without the education, me having to explain clumping it into one category.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have a lot of people that come to me and say, my doctor recommended so-and-so community. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's the very last community that I would ever recommend for this particular person.
Right.
And so you have to really work with kid gloves when you get to that point, because then you have to show them. And I'm not about selling.
No, you're not.
I'm about showing people what the value is.
You're a problem solver. That's the category I put you in, because you're engineer mindset, and that's never going to change. You have to figure out every little piece of the problem, like how did it start? Because many things got affected by the burnt wiring harness in the truck.
Oh yeah.
But you also, so you fixed all the stuff it affected, but you found the root cause of what started it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we'll patch and fix, but we don't break it down. And that's what you do, and you take the times with your clients. And time is precious now too. People like to rush. That's why we talked about the slowing down. But you get back to the money part. But the physician saying, here, you need to put mom, dad, or whoever here, and they just use the word nursing home, and they throw it out like it's a dollar bill. Here's a dollar bill. There's the nursing home. Mm-hmm. And what happens with that is, like most people follow the instructions from their physician, they don't do this every day. They go price what it costs to live in a skilled nursing facility privately.
Right.
scares them to death. You know, what would you say? You see this more than I do on pricing sides. An assisted living that somebody would be very comfortable and well taken care of versus a private room in a skilled nursing facility. Roughly, how much difference would that be in cost a month?
Normally, it's about triple.
Triple.
If not double, it's triple.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and that is insane. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, not that, and I don't want our friends at skilled nursing to be like, don't talk bad about us. No, they come in definitely when needed. They're great, but the word skilled is everything right there.
Right.
Because they are carrying more load of having nurses. They're required to have more nurses. The level of care that they provide turns into more invasive care.
Right.
Things that necessarily aren't done in an assisted living. So I think educating the family members, just like we did with the physicians, about what can happen and what cannot happen. Because you know what? I don't think, and I feel like I'm talking a lot on this one, but I'm just trying to get this point across. Not everybody in that position in panic mode is going to sit down and have time to read the 6184.
Right.
I wouldn't expect them to.
Well, you know what gets me is many times a family will call me and they'll say, you know, my mom is in such and such rehab, and they're saying that she has to stay there. And they're telling me that it's, and I'm just going to throw out a number at this point. They're telling me it's going to be $10,000 a month, and we don't have $10,000 a month. And I just had that a couple of days ago. Somebody called me, and that was really similar to the conversation. That's how it started. And I said, well, can you tell me what is going on? And she said, well, my mom's been there for a little over 90 days, and they're telling me that we have to now pay by the month, private pay.
They're running another 100 days.
Right. And I said, well, normally you have 100 days, and after that 100 days, you do have to switch over to private pay as long as you can do it. And I said, but let's not jump right into that immediately. I said that's a smooth transition for them because they've already been in the rehab for 90 days. All the caregivers know this client. They know what they need. I said, let's see if she's appropriate for maybe assisted living or memory care, depending on what the needs are. And the long and short of it was she was very appropriate for assisted living. And instead of being $10,000 a month, it was $3,500 a month.
And they probably could handle that better.
They could handle that better. And then it goes into the education of, well, what are the differences?
Yes. And, you know, I've been asked that so many times because my world now is obviously pharmacy. But every time I go, you know, I can't get what I have been for so long, an administrator in those buildings spouting out these rules and regulations. So I go in to teach about pharmacy. That's my main objective. But I always fall right back into rules, regulations, and what can be done. And honestly, it's changed in favor over the years. In South Carolina, it's the 6184. North Carolina, it's another. But they're very similar. Every state has a regulation of what is considered skilled, what is not. You know, they even have what is considered hospital of inpatient or observation. I mean, believe it or not. So, but I always find myself in every teaching scenario going back to this. And what I like to tell them is I give them a small breakdown about, well, you know, you have to be able to do one of so many ADLs, you know, like can they dress themselves or can they feed themselves, you know? Just very simple things. It's not trying to have them go out and play a full basketball game, anything, run a marathon. But we are very lucky. There's a lot of great assisted livings in South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee that I get to see that the person that works in the community that, you know, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
They'll go out and do an assessment. And they are so skilled in their brain. I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, because they could assess me by the telephone. I mean, they're just that good. They can find somebody that is inappropriately placed, spending way more than they have to, and place them in a scenario that is less of a level of care. So, say, skilled to assisted living,
Mm-hmm.
save them triple difference, say $3,500 versus triple that.
Right.
And what they're doing is really a service, because also to the skilled nursing facility that they were at rehab at. Because we do know one fact of life is yesterday, which we saw each other yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
but guess what? We're older today.
Oh, yeah.
And tomorrow we're going to get older. So the good part about this is success stories. Somebody coming from rehab of a skilled facility, nobody thought that they would be AL appropriate. They totally are. And then they thrive. Like a shell comes off.
Well, that particular person that I was just speaking
Mm-hmm.
about, the daughter said, well, they already referred to an AL and they were rejected. Assisted living, I'm
Yes.
sorry. And I said, really? And I said, can you tell me which one?
Mm-hmm.
And she told me which one. I said, you know what? I know the nurse there. I said, let me call her and see what's going on. And this was July 4th.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
and so I called the nurse there, who I know very well, and she said, no, she's totally appropriate. We're just full. And I said, oh.
Big difference.
So this is a little bit different than what the daughter is hearing where she's at currently. And the daughter is just hearing she can't go to any assisted living. And what you're telling me is, yes, she is appropriate. It's just you guys don't have room for her at this time.
Right.
She said, exactly. I said, okay, that's a completely different scenario. So now
That's
we
night
can
and
work.
day. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I have a really good. I've kept a friendship with a family. They now live out in the Midwest now. I started with them here in South Carolina, upstate, and I was called on Christmas Day, and I don't remember what year this was, but we'll say this was some time ago. And you know me, if I don't care, call me. If it's Christmas Day, whatever, and it's got to do with the well-being of somebody, and I can help, I'm going to try. So I head to the hospital, and you know, I could see the eyes of the hospital staff, and I knew most of them. You probably know most of them now as well. It's Christmas. You're here doing an assessment? No, absolutely, because it seemed like it was critical. And this person, the situation, yes, they absolutely look like they probably would not qualify. Now, after going through everything, looking at all the proper notes, the medications, you know the list. I mean, it's a lot of work to do a good assessment. It was just that where they were living at home and they couldn't take care of themselves made them appear to be inappropriate. Right. So I approved them and had them come in the day after Christmas. And once, I'd say 3 weeks went by, the nutrition program kicked in, the medication program had kicked in, the interaction with staff, activities, and this was not an expensive community. When I say this didn't have the beautiful bells and whistles. This would be something that you would drive by and probably look at and go, you know what? I wish I hope I don't have to go to this building one day. That's what you would probably appear to think. No, they're great. Unbelievably great. 3 weeks, this person had gained like 8 pounds, you know, which took the adult failure to thrive away.
Yep.
Had saw the beautician, like little things, and was the life of the party. Now, as years went by, this person aged in place like we're doing right now. And guess what I did? Picked up the telephone and called a relationship that I had with a skilled nursing facility because it was time.
Right.
But what we did, and this is why I wanted you to continue this conversation, because I really appreciate how you specifically are a good steward of their money. Even if somebody has a lot of it, you don't automatically take them to the most expensive thing. You still treat them as if they have no money, and you ask all the questions. You follow the same thing, and you let your brain and your knowledge take you to where they're going to be the best fit.
Well, the reality is every senior has tried to preserve a nest egg
Yes.
that they can pass on to their children.
Yes.
And many seniors, the last 5 years of their life, that entire nest egg goes to senior care.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to say senior living
No,
because it's not always
no,
living. Sometimes
not.
it's just care.
It is.
And if that senior had a voice, they would say, save as much as you can for my kids.
Yeah.
And so I go, even when the kids tell me, money's no object. We'll kick in if we have to, which they do. I was on the phone with a child this morning
Yeah.
that said, my dad's monthly income won't support what he needs right now. And I said, well, hang on a minute. I said, I'll be back to the office this afternoon. And I said, we'll go through in greater detail. I said, but your dad spent his whole life as a doctor. And maybe things didn't work out exactly the way he wanted, but I think what he was focused on and why he worked so hard all those years would still ring true to him, which is he wants to preserve as much as he can for your benefit.
Yes.
And, you're saying just the opposite. You want to kick in for his benefit. And those are both great ideas, but let's let him have his say.
Yes. Continue to respect
Right.
who he is.
Right.
I find that, and that's a tough one personally for me because I get it. I know you do too. I mean, we know both of our families. I know when it's time for me to go, I would love to have everything to be able to give to my boys. I hope my wife precedes me because, if not, it's just going to be, I'll be lost. So, but I also know they feel differently. No, we don't care what you leave us. We want you taken care of. That's where it can get really expensive or really conservative. I guess is the right word. I don't know. I'm fumbling that word because if you just did it off emotion, which is what we're talking about, mistakes happen. Money spent that doesn't need to be spent always happens.
Right. That's
why you got to have Mark, which you're the neutral person in it that has empathy for both sides. Because it's like you said earlier, and I do want to remind back to a previous show, because every time you do something, you're currently, and a lot of your clients won't know this, a lot of people that see you every day at every function in the world you're at, I mean, you do so much, but somebody on the telephone with you for the first time or so, they don't really know that you're dealing with the same thing in your own life. So you're actually using emotion that you truly have and are dealing with to help them.
Right.
And you're not doing it from a salesman standpoint, because it's some people in our business, in your business specifically, the pharmacy business is hard enough. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in your business, a placement business, it's like every other business. There are some folks that just have not done a good job at it and saw the money and not really cared about where the placement happens and conserving what money is there and doing the right job. And even following up with them after the placement has happened and you've been paid and the world It's technically over. You overcome that, though, because I think you are consistent. You still continue to go to these communities and educate and show up. And I think you've proven and shown what you can do.
Well, I tell people all the time, I'm not going to recommend a place for your mom
Yeah.
that I wouldn't be willing to move my mom to.
Right.
And that rings so true with me every day. And, I make a lot less money doing that.
Well, see, okay, I promise on everything on this table. I was driving home last night from a meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about me and you with a conversation we had a long, long time ago. And I said, should I ask him this question? But, things you never talk about, what, money, politics, and religion. I think we've always said, don't talk about those things. But if you were to have to guess, not dollar amount, just number of people that you could have placed, but you didn't. Because you knew where you could have placed them, but you knew it wasn't the right thing to do. Would you say that's in the hundreds by now?
Probably.
Yeah.
I bet you.
And that's a lot of money.
50% of the people that originally call me on the phone, and I don't tell them what they want to hear, and consequently they may go online and get hooked up with a company that doesn't care, and they end up getting placed the way that they think they want to be placed.
And see, this is where you and I come together with something in that I try to explain to people, but in the nicest way without ever bashing anybody else. It's hard. It's hard to be that guy because I see so many people and talk to so many people, and competitors, if we want to use that word, are usually standing beside me, listening to me. So, and I don't think you've ever heard me bash, anyone, but here's the difference. So, obviously, my job is Select Care Pharmacy, account executive. I work with communities and work with families to put in a pharmacy program that serves them well. You work on placing them in the right community that has everything that would fit or check the box that they need for quality of life. You said that earlier.
Right.
But you know what we have in common that's different is we're both independent. We're not, it's us. It's like I don't have this big corporate machine. I don't have a script to follow. The only thing I can follow is my experience and credentials and what I know to work, and I learn every day. And you are the same way. You're not sitting at a call center with a headset on placing people. You're actually at that community researching it before you ever recommend it to one person. And that makes it hard. It makes it hard for what I do, and I'm sure it makes it hard for what you do because I've sat in big communities where I know they want our pharmacy services. But they're like, but we're signed up with this big corporate pharmacy, and we're just not happy. But they stop there. It's like they're scared to go back to independent, and where I overcome that usually, and it takes a long time. I had to work with one group for over 2 years. We've had this conversation. But then all of a sudden they start to realize that, corporate, maybe sometimes you are just a number. Not all. There's a lot of good corporates out there. But even in healthcare and every other business, sometimes if they have too many customers, that also affects performance. So you only handle what you can handle. I've noticed that.
Well, I try to.
No, you do. Well, you know what you do. You call people. You do things like that. But let's talk about how you educate. And here's the thing. I don't think you've ever charged anybody for this.
Nope.
But I follow you a lot in many communities, and they'll be like, "Oh, if you'd have came yesterday, Mark was here." I was like, "Well, I'm sure I'll talk to him soon." And but you are teaching the communities, the EDs, the marketers, the director of nursing, the staff, what family members are telling you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not even ones that are placed in their building, just general information.
Right.
And then you're repeating also what you learn from the communities of what really can happen in a community, what is not realistic expectations, and you're able to teach your customers.
It's so funny.
It's amazing.
It's funny because my wife many days will say, "What's your day look like?" And
What does she do? Call my wife first before she asks that? Because I get the same thing.
and
What are
and
you doing today?
And I'll start telling her, and she's looking at me like, "Are you serious? You're like today. You're going to do another broadcast with Andy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is important stuff.
Yes.
People need to know."
Right.
And I can't always tell everybody over the phone
No.
or at a networking event,
No.
but this is a different platform where people can learn things that you don't know what you don't know.
Well, and you know what I have made this my goal. This is the reason this is here. Is I've had a lot of people sit in that seat, whether it be with the cameras that you have now or before that, you know. And I'll ask a question that people sometimes don't want to ask. But you know what? It's either an uncomfortable question because they're scared to hear the answer, or maybe they're scared to ask it because they're scared that who they're asking won't know. I'm not quite sure, but I've just seen so many scenarios that if you don't ask, I feel that you're going to have to accept whatever it is that you didn't ask if it goes right or wrong. Either way. You know, there's questions that maybe 10 years ago I wouldn't have known to ask. And you see me in some meetings. Sometimes I have to back up a little bit because I feel like maybe I'm going to ask too pointed question, maybe. But I know in the long run that question is going to be significant to the quality of their world.
And we have to not only read the family, but we have to read the senior that the family is trying to help. And what I see more and more is family members afraid that they're going to make a decision that is going to be contrary to what a brother or sister that's out of state would want. And so consequently, they feel like, well, if I throw more money at it, then it's bound to be a better decision. And that's not always true. Sometimes it can be.
No, I mean, listen, there is a saying that, if enough money will fix most anything. But it only fixes maybe the outside surface of things. We as humans, and many physicians that we've talked to that have been at this table, that we've talked to one-on-one, we know so very little about the brain. It's that complex. That part is what we try to work on of the resident, not only the quality of care, making sure ADLs and all are taken care, but mentally that they're happy. We don't, people don't think about this. You hear a lot about depression. And you hear that from the commercials that you see on TV, and it's always showing the 25 to 45-year-old on the bicycles that, ride down and stop and look sad. But that's actually the smaller percentage of who is actually really depressed in the United States. It's our elderly population.
Oh, yeah.
We got to work hard on that. So sometimes, it's tough. I can throw money at it and make it pretty, but the things that we have to do by trial and error, how long are you going to throw money at that and not work because you're totally in the wrong environment? You're just not in the right place, and, I can live in a mansion. That would be great. 50,000 square foot, give me 26 bedrooms or whatever. But is that really the right environment for me to be at if, like even now, imagine me trying to walk up the steps of 26 to see 26 rooms.
Yeah.
That would not be, but I'd be wasting money. But so let's talk about. I'm going to flip it back a little bit to the money, and I pulled an article up, and we'll talk about this in a minute because this is amazing to me because we're talking about interest rate stuff. I mean, you were talking about this yesterday or something, but so like a $250,000 house. Well, if somebody's financing it, say in 2001, there was like 2.9%. Over 30 years, that makes it where they're going to pay roughly 50% of what the house was.
Right.
Okay, now at 7.99%, 250,000, you're paying about $1 million in interest over 30 years. So that's 160%.
Yeah.
That's a little crazy, huge. But there's an advantage to it, even in the madness. What you know about with placing someone, let's say there is this financial issue now, but they have to be somewhere. And you slowed everybody down, you got the information, and you know the right community they should be at, but right now the money is going to be super tight. A lot of people or a lot of companies that do placement will move on because it doesn't fit right into that perfect box. You'll still go in and sit down because you understand how the inside of that industry works, that many communities have programs.
Mm-hmm.
And they may be waiting for some sale of a property. John Fravel, I told you yesterday, I was waiting to have you and I talk again before I put his show kind of out too, because Fravel works with corporations that buy homes. And literally when he was talking to me, the day before the conversation we had, he was talking with a client of his. And because the daughter had called him out because they went to church together and just said, hey, I just wanted to check this out because somebody was coming to buy their mom's home for $60,000. And that's what the mom was going to use to go to assisted living. And he went there.
That's 1 year.
Yes, that's 1 year. And he went in and he was like, really? And yeah, they're going to pay me cash. His client was excited. And he said, listen, let me talk to this assisted living for a moment. And he stepped outside and he actually called me. And I told him, who to call. And they worked with them. And, they had the upfront and pay and understood that maybe 10 or 11 days before the normal cycle of billing would start. And that community agreed to work with them. Shocking, but they will.
Oh, yeah.
They'll work with you. And I told you this yesterday, but it's still surprising to hear. Got $260,000. Letting a professional go in that wasn't looking for the advantage of the situation, actually had a buyer, already knew buyers, set up corporations, because we talked about this, won't say the company, but there's this big company in our area that buys up real estate because they're going to have a lot of people moving in really quick, experts in the field of what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And they're paying top dollar. But that client has that asset.
Well, you know me, and I refer to people all the time. If I think somebody has a better answer than what I can give them, I usually phone a friend. I do that with you all the time.
And I do the same. You have to.
And so a lot of those friends are consequently real estate agents.
We know a lot of.
And I like to put people in touch with a great real estate agent that is going to do the very best for my client. But sometimes that's not the right answer.
It's not.
And some of my best success stories come from saying to the family, you know what? Your mom and dad have this big asset here that you want to sell immediately and use that to offset the cost. But we're in a very strong market, and renting is very expensive here.
Oh.
Have you thought about renting that house for 3 or 4 years? And that will completely offset the difference in cost.
And more.
And then at the end, the house is appreciated, and you still have the asset to use maybe when it's time to go to skilled nursing. And I've had a number of clients say, I never thought of that before.
Right.
I just thought we should sell.
Right. And, literally, I have tried to refer to help sell a home to John or other folks that we know. And they were good enough people to come in and go, you know what? Yes, I could, but let me show you the value, what you could do. Now, they had to walk away from the money of a commission.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? We don't forget that.
Right.
In our industry, I know it sounds big, but healthcare is really a small world. We run across each other so much that they'll probably sell us a house because we're like, okay, they were that honest. Mm-hmm. We're going to refer, and that's how this is a word of mouth business. But tips and tricks of getting there. Another one was a whole life insurance policy.
Oh yeah.
Those, you've paid up forever. And let's say you have a $200,000 or $100,000 policy, and a lot of times at an advanced age, they'll say we'll give you $90,000. They'll still make 10 because they know that it's a paid policy. Mm-hmm. That can take you a long way, and so you can have your money while you're alive, so you can get great care. I mean, but you wouldn't know these things if you didn't slow them down,
right?
And ask the right questions. And I know the questions seem tough. I'm sure that you've offended people with a question.
Probably daily.
Daily. But then, what's funny is, because, I have, and it was never the intent to offend, but I can tell by the deer in the headlights, like, whoa. But usually a week or so after, they're back laughing and talking with me, and they understand 100% why that question was asked. Mm-hmm. There's some communities that will call you up to say, hey, we decided to run a promotion. There's so many, and so when someone thinks they're priced out, you just may know, you literally have had a phone call going, no, wait a minute. So-and-so that would be a great fit has a promotion. And, how many times has that happened?
And a lot of times those promotions aren't just the first month or two.
Oh, no.
Sometimes they can be a year-long promotion.
Oh, yes.
Or it can be, this is a lifetime deal that we're offering here for the next couple months because we know this is a slow time of the year, mm-hmm. and we need to fill these rooms.
Absolutely.
And people will move in. A couple of years ago, I had a client move to the very same community that they were already looking at, mm-hmm. but they didn't know there was a promotion. Mm-hmm. And they moved in at $2,500 less per month.
Yes.
And yes. that was a lifetime promotion.
One piece of advice that I give clients, usually have them call you, honestly, at this point, because I find myself, I'll go in circles, and I'm like, let me tell you about the pharmacy. I know the building because I service it there. But here is a tip, though, that I still tell people. That if there is a community that you want to go to, and a lot of times they're already working with that community and they haven't reached out, so all this could have probably already been avoided. But let's say they're in this situation, and they do have savings, but it's limited, so they're trying to stretch it out for as many years as they possibly can. Many, many communities that I know in the Southeast, if you pay a year at a time, mm-hmm. that is refundable too. But there's a big break you can get.
Oh, yeah.
Like a significant break. And let's say that breaks 10%. That's a lot of money. That just adds on to the longevity of that money. So there's many tricks and things, but, there's no way the average client that is looking for placement will have the opportunity, just like your wife asks you, what do you have planned today? Well, probably a million things, because I'm probably going to stop by here just to check on so-and-so and check on this ED and check on, but you're learning so much, because then you start learning about the added values they're doing, or even, like you said, their census may go low. Mm-hmm. It's real estate. It's care, but it's still real estate. There's fluxes with them. And if you can catch a community that's great, but just at the right time, or they expanded, you probably could get a lifetime deal.
Yeah.
So really the point of it is, that's why they need to call you. because they will never have the time to be able to research all of this that you have to do daily. You know,
And it's not obvious when you look at a community
right,
because the owner of that community might be building 5 other communities somewhere else in the state,
right,
and they're in a cash flow crunch.
right, right.
But as you're driving through Greenville, that community looks exactly the same as it's looked forever.
Right.
You would never know that they have some really huge specials going on.
Well, and you put it in focus because I guess I didn't think about talking about that. Really, I've never talked about that on this show before. But a lot of people only see within their 30-mile scope.
Right.
And they know the community is great because, they've had aunts, uncles, everybody pass through the communities, and the EDs and nurses have been part of the external community. But like you said, there may be 12 other properties that's owned by the same company in the state, and not all those towns are booming as, say, this town. So they all pour their money toward like a center of a swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
And the more successful buildings are dumping more than the less successful buildings. The less successful buildings have to take more, and they may be 5 miles apart, and you never know.
Right.
And same ownership, same level of quality care standards, everything the same, just a different name. And you know.
A normal person wouldn't know.
A normal person. That's why an expert is always important in this decision. I want to add this about the value because, once again, we've come to another hour like that fast. But to call you is free. See, I think a lot of people also miss that point because we didn't speak about this last time. I never really brought it up. But it doesn't cost them a dime to call you. In all fairness up front, the community pays you.
Right.
The family, but you work for the family. That's what they have to understand. So that's what I was speaking of earlier, that you've walked away from or not placed. Listen, that community would have paid you if you had just said, here's some clients. You chose not to.
And many times it would be very easy for me to move somebody to a different community that I partner with as well, that might cost them another $2,000 a month. It'd be very easy for me to just say, oh, I prefer that one.
Sure.
But that's not the right thing to do.
Right.
And the right thing to do is to put somebody where they're appropriate and where they feel loved and cared for and where it preserves whatever assets they have. You know, to me, that's one of the defining factors is because I know that senior would rather pass a little bit of something on to their children than to see a really fancy chandelier in the lobby.
Well, and also you told me this one time we were just talking, and I had the same thought for many years. Somebody worked 50 years of their life for 5 years of great care. That's not a fair trade. So if you can preserve some of that and make it valuable, it's important. But let me ask you this. So this is a tough question. That most people would never ask you this. You doing the right thing because that's who you have chose to be, the man you chose to be, your whole family. How frustrating can it get with you working in our industry where we do have there's bad apples that do similar, that are not doing the right thing, but you have to continue to do the right thing because that's who you've committed to be.
Well,
how do you deal with that?
Before you got here, I was on the phone with a marketing director sitting out here in the parking lot, and we were talking about just that thing. There is a company that, in my opinion, preys on seniors. And I said, it's completely up to you how you approach this. I know that I'm still going to do what's right by the client. I am going to send them to your community, and you're not going to pay me a dime. You're going to pay it to some other company that's completely uninvolved, but it's still the right thing to do for the client. And I said, I think at a given point, because now probably 10 times this year, this company has been paid for the work that I've done. And I think at a given point, you as the community need to address that and say, maybe this isn't the right partner for our community. And I said, I can't do that for you.
No.
But at a given point, I'm doing the right thing, and I'm going to continue to do the right thing no matter what you do. But I think at a given point, you would start seeing, okay, maybe we need to take the side of integrity and see where it leads us. And
it's hard. I know this probably sometimes at night when you do get home. And fortunately, you have an office as soon as you walk in. I laugh because I'm like, okay, that means you never stop. But, I mean, I know that has to frustrate you to death. I felt the same way. You know, I got a call. It's been less than a week from a huge provider of medication that said, you absolutely need to stop training some of the communities because you're going in and doing additional training. And there's no rule against it that I can't. You know, not just teach pharmacy training, but I may touch on what DHEC talks about, bloodborne pathogens or other things, because I'm used to that. That's my world. But I don't charge for it. And they were fussing at me because their contract, the way they have it laid out, is an additional fee every time they come in to talk about that. And I'm sitting there going, you know, I don't have to charge for it. I mean, I guess I could, but then I probably wouldn't get the response from the communities that let me come in and do that training. And me doing it for free gets it out to more people, and therefore somewhere along the line I think that it has helped someone that would not have had the training. But yet I was being blistered. Like, they really said, you're really messing up our industry. And I didn't see it that way, but I went home bothered by it because I want to be, I think everybody in our industry, I want the respect from, and I want to give it to them as well. And I wasn't doing anything malicious or anything of that nature. I just felt I was doing what was right.
well, you offered to do that yesterday at a nonprofit that I work for.
Sure.
And
'Cause
they
it's the
had
right thing to do.
no idea what you were even talking about.
No.
But
No.
it's something that they need to know about.
Right.
They need the education.
Right.
And, you know, that's, I'm all about trying to educate somebody, even if they're not a potential client.
Yeah.
I want to give them enough of an education to where they can help a senior somewhere along the line.
Sure.
Even if it's not their own parent,
Right.
might be an aunt or an uncle.
A tip they just didn't know to think about or something.
Right.
You know,
Right.
a token of that you had a conversation with me.
And I think that's what you and I have in common. You know, that's what this broadcast is about, is educating people.
Yes.
So that they, you know, if they don't know the answer, they can say, you know what, I did hear this somewhere. I think it was on Andy's show. And
I've had that a lot, and that's such a compliment. I was at, you know, I have to go to these conventions every year, and it's been so nice this past couple of months ago, the people that come up and go, they'll reference a show. They're like, that was just really good. You know, thank you. That's, you get the, you know, I don't know, it's like a kid with a Christmas party or something. I'm like, because it makes me just really happy. Like, okay, so they heard me. They hear a lot, and I get it, but that one thing will stick with them forever. Just that one thing. And I think, I always say this with every show, we as people, the only thing we really want at the end of the day is to be remembered. And I'd like to be remembered in a positive way. Sure, am I perfect? No, absolutely. So far from it that, you know, I struggle to be. I think the older I get, the better I get, like wine. But, you know, I think we've just seen a lot of wrong, and we can correct it if we want to, you know, or at least try. And, you know, some people don't even want that, and we're okay with that too, but we tried. And I think that's all that's asked of it, to give real, true information and do the best we can do. That's all.
And the beauty of what you're doing now is while you're sleeping at night, you might just be educating somebody at the same time.
Yeah.
Because this is out there now.
Hope so. You know what? I wish, and I'm going to finish up with this. It's just fun. I wish, say, I was my age now with the technology that I have, but 30 years ago where I could pick up my phone and like have all the answers to everything that which is so untrue. Everybody thinks, oh, you can find whatever. No. You still have got to talk to people that are in the know. Like, it may give you a general idea like that, and I'm not one to talk, but I literally will. My son and I were having this conversation. The FDA gives you a calorie, what you should eat per day. That's an estimate. That could be too many for some people, too less for some. You got to find your own. And the only way to do that is you got to educate yourself and deal with the now, not the general information. And I think that's where you and I come in good with what we do. We try to keep information daily. We try to keep the news going daily. It's like we've talked about before, because a property is perfect for somebody today. You know what? You're in them so much, and all of a sudden it changes, maybe ownership, leadership, something. It's not the same way. Guess what? It goes off. It's not a viable option anymore. So we're just not stuck in one way. We're always willing to grow and learn. And so that's why this, I guess, is an educational type show. I like to have fun with it, but it's educational. But at the end of the day, I think we do a lot of good. I think, I can sleep at night and know that, I gave the best information out there that I could. As the people in my class are having their cell phones up, Googling what I'm trying to say, which I find funny because, I wish I had that. I can't get past that. But, no, you'll learn something every day. You need to make that your priority. I had a resident teach me that. Said if you wake up in the morning and you don't learn something that day, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's no way you're going to know everything in this world has to offer. I'm like, you're right. Absolutely. And I've never forgotten that. Luckily, he told me when I was in my 20s, so I could actually use that throughout my life. But
the biggest thing that I've learned is if you can just be quiet for a minute
that's
and listen to what somebody else is telling you, you learn a whole lot. I sat with 5 veterans this morning, and it's amazing what you learn from guys that have been through what those guys have been through.
Oh, yeah.
And
we can hear the stories, and we're amazed by it, but we'll never understand. But face to face, we get a little bit better of understanding, because you see the wrinkles in their forehead, their eyes squinch. They're telling you this, and they're reliving the physical, the emotional, all that. And you're just amazed because, I've heard some awesome stories like that. That's why I love going in and out of buildings so much. I mean, I love what I do, but I get to talk to these folks. And a lot of times I walk out going, I'm a weenie. And there's just, because I know that I would not have been able to man up like that. Just know it.
And they start describing sounds and smells and the taste that was in the air that day.
Everything. Detail.
And that's something you'll never get out of a history book.
No.
Or off of a documentary.
No. There's a book. I don't know if you and I talked about this. I know it was talked about one time. It's called The Lies My History Teacher Told Me. Because what you read is, and that's why I referred back to the internet. Everybody likes to pull up and look, find this information on healthcare. Well, it's going to be who paid the most money to have their sponsorship up top is the answer that you're going to get, and it's from their viewpoint.
And it might be from 2012.
Right. Like literally, and it's not an updated list. Or go face to face with the person that was there. They could not post that.
Yeah.
Or could not. I mean, that would be considered rough reading material. But it's true.
Politically incorrect, maybe.
Maybe.
At
but
the
it's
time.
The truth.
But now.
But things can be PC, things can be whatever, and I never, want to cross the line to offend anybody. But sometimes the truth is the truth.
Right.
And that's, you can't label that. It just is what it is. So, and that person that got to tell you the story, it's therapeutic. it helped them. And, you know, getting back to what you do, to sum this up, your best thing is when you can talk with the client. You know, you talk with the family, but really by that time you realize family dynamics, all that. You listen to 20% of that, 80% of what the client says, you make a good determination. But it's hard work.
And you know, that's a commodity that's dying
Yeah.
every day.
Yes.
That is not coming back.
No.
You know, we have people that made it through some incredible things in their lifetime, and they're passing away, and they're taking those memories with them.
Yes.
And we're losing those. We're losing the wisdom that goes with them every day. And I see that, and it frustrates me.
But you're going to do something about it.
I'm going to try.
And I'll help you with whatever you need help with on that, because you got to preserve. We've lost the art of communication. Mm-hmm. And with that, it's going to be so boring. You know, as a kid, I remember special was sitting around listening to Grandpa. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. And now, I think kids listen, but, you know, it's just not like exciting to a week. You know, you're getting to go to Grandpa's house. Like, oh boy, next week it's going to be crazy because he's going to tell us some stories that you thought maybe he was kidding about, or Grandma was kidding about. Later in life, you learn it was 100% true, and he was actually watering it down for you.
Yeah.
You're like, oh boy, you know, that's pretty awesome. But as always, Mark, I appreciate you being here, taking the time, because I just wanted to continue. There was so much more that had to be said of little tiny things throughout this, because the work that you do and so many people out here that work with us every day, we can't create a job description for them. It's just an unbelievable thing, but it's servant's heart. It's just doing the right thing and trying, and hopefully something that you and I have talked about between the two episodes here recently resonates and kind of gives some people advice or to think, slow down, call, you know, just and work with you, you know, or work with someone, speak with someone.
Right.
And I'm always going through this here at the end of every show now. And you want a great pharmacy program for your ALF? Call me. I will come in personally. I think people miss that point a lot too, because they're like, what does Andy do? Because we see him doing the pharmacy, see him doing the show. No, I do this every day for clients. You know, education, doing the best. I know it's a pharmacy base, but I'm really helping you throughout the whole community because I want to see it thrive. I just don't want to see failure, because failure is bad for everybody. Mm-hmm. So once again, appreciate you as always. Thank you for being, you know, great at what you do, more so being a great friend. It means a lot. Guys, as always, thank you for watching the show, supporting us, feedback, email with any questions that you have, get a hold of Mark with any placement questions that you have, come in. We're both willing here to help and do whatever we can, but certainly until next week, God bless.